What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, May 14th, 2021. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about today, and as usual, we're going to do news until we run out of the news. Then we're going to open up the phone lines for your comments, questions, observations, and opinions. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. So let's get right on into it, and I want to start over at Maricopa because there's a lot happening there that we really need to pay attention to. And starting with a story out of Station Gossip, Ken Bennett, who's the director of what they're now calling America's Audit, is saying that close to 500,000 ballots have now been counted and examined by the audit team in Arizona, and they are finding significant discrepancies. The ballots are off up to 17.5%. That is way beyond the possibility of human error. Let's face it, honest errors are going to fall either way. There'll be as many errors for Trump as there are against Trump, and they are basically saying that it is likely that Joe Biden did not win Maricopa County, and so they're looking at these significant differences. They're going to wait to finish the audit to make a definitive statement, but at this point, it is looking like Trump won Maricopa County. So Arizona Senate President sent a letter to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors outlining the major issues discovered in the audit and offering to settle them without additional subpoenas or compulsory action. We'll wait and see what the County Board of Supervisors are going to do. And I don't think they're going to give up without a fight. Story coming on out of the Epic Times. Dominion Voting Systems and the Maricopa County officials are refusing to hand over the passwords for the administrative access to the election machines. And Dominion is using the excuse that Cyber Ninjas, the firm hired by the Arizona Senate to conduct the audit, along with 3 of the companies, is not accredited by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, and they're concerned about releasing Dominion's intellectual property to an unaccredited, biased, and plainly unreliable actor such as Cyber Ninjas. Well, frankly, I think they could release the passwords. They could take a look at what's going on at the administrative level, and then they could change the passwords again to lock it all back up again. So to me, it's a very, very thin excuse indeed. Story out of Investment Watch blog. Maricopa, we mentioned this earlier in the week, Maricopa deleted the full election databases from the 2020 election cycle just days before the election equipment was delivered to the audit. This is obviously obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence. And the question I have is, how were they able to delete the full election databases without those administrative passwords? Little question that keeps buzzing around in the back of my head. Story coming on out of the Gateway Pundit saying that the data drives deleted by the Maricopa County included what are called the adjudicated files where votes were changed. So this is where a lot of the skullduggery took place, and that has now been erased. And I don't think the Democrats in Maricopa County understand that everything they are doing is sending the message they have got something to hide. And maybe their attitude is going to be, well, if there's no courtroom-worthy evidence, then we're not going to go to jail, and we don't care if America knows the election was stolen because we stole it fair and square, And that's all that's going to be done about it. Story coming out of Madness Hub, the Maricopa auditors are finding discrepancies between the number of ballots and the ballot reports in each box. In other words, they're not matching up. Now, they're not saying if they're finding more ballots than are supposed to be in the box or less, but again, it's evidence that something has been going on in the back rooms late at night to change the outcome of the election. So Arizona, following along what happened in Georgia, the Secretary of State turns out to have illegally certified the 2020 election result without having the legally mandated chain of custody documentation for every ballot. That's one of the things that has turned out to be deficient in Arizona, is no chain of custody. And they're supposed to definitely have that for all elections. Meanwhile, the Arizona GOP chair, Dr. Kelly Ward, is saying legal action is imminent. The breach of voter identification information occurred during the last election cycle. So they were definitely playing games there. Meanwhile, the state Senate is now asking county officials to testify about deleted files and the significant irregularities and the tabulation machine manipulation. So that is still, it's heating up, and there's no stopping it. This thing, is going all the way here. Story coming on out of the Gateway Pundit. Interesting little story. They're talking about the routers, and the Arizona Senate subpoena asked for access and control of all the routers to garner the system logs. And Maricopa County initially agreed to provide the routers so Senate auditors could access the logs. Then the county changed and said that they would provide virtual images, which opens up the possibility of fraud. And now, interestingly enough, the county claims, quote, they've been informed, end quote, not to provide either. And so the question is, who exactly is informing the county officials to withhold subpoenaed information from the Arizona Senate? And that is definitely the $64,000 question. Getting into other politics, Donald Trump is making his return. He's going to hold his first 3 rallies since January 6th as he seeks to capitalize on the crisis engulfing Biden and lay down a marker for 2024. And Biden is definitely not doing well. He's not getting good reviews for his first 100 days in office. He's not getting good reviews for the economy. He's certainly not getting good reviews for immigration. All righty. Elise Stefanik, as predicted, has won the vote to be the GOP conference chair. This was the position previously held by Liz Cheney. And so she is now in, Liz Cheney is out, and good riddance as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's talk about COVID-19. There's a lot going on. We mentioned this the other day, but we're going to talk about it again. The Yankees are suffering a COVID resurgence because 8 of their fully vaccinated players and staff have now tested positive for COVID-19. Really good, effective vaccine. What can I tell you? Story out of Station Gossip. It talks about a study that found that 25% of vaccinated people suffer from some kind of post-immunization effects. Many of them are mild. Some are life-threatening. And we keep hearing about that as well. Bill Maher, the host of Real Time with Bill Maher, is fully vaccinated, and yet he tested positive for COVID. So they've canceled tonight's episode of Real Time in order to give him time to recover and the staff time to basically do whatever they're going to do, knowing now that they may have been exposed. Story coming on out of Russia today. Over in Sweden, according to the Swedish Medical Products Agency, the Scandinavian nation has received 31,844 reports of adverse reactions linked to the COVID-19 vaccines. Now, Sweden is using 3 variants of the vaccine. There are currently 2,100 reports of side effects from the Moderna shot. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has been associated with 9,117 health issues, but the all-time prize winner is the AstraZeneca vaccine with 19,961 reports of adverse effects. And the most common side effects for all 3 of the vaccines were fever and headaches. Other reported adverse reactions include nausea, joint pain, and dizziness. Okay. So let's talk about what's going on in Israel and Palestine, because it is getting ugly down there. And Israeli ground forces have now crossed the border into Gaza proper. They had been firing from their side of the border into the Gaza Strip, but now they have rolled into the Gaza Strip after Hamas strongly warned Tel Aviv against going on the offensive. Well, they should have known that was going to provoke Israel into doing exactly that. So Israel's War Minister Benny Gantz sent a whopping 9,000 reservists to the occupied territories border with Gaza in an exceptional call-up. And so it's definitely heating up over there. Israeli troops have hit another 150 Hamas targets in Gaza in their biggest bombardment yet. They've hit what they claim is Hamas headquarters. Meanwhile, Hamas missiles targeted Israel's Ramon airport in retaliation for the aggression against Palestinians. And it is important to remember, as the propaganda flies back and forth, this all started when Israeli forces raided the Al-Aqsa Mosque and targeted Palestinians during their Ramadan prayers. Now, just for a moment, all of you religious people, imagine that you're in church or in temple or wherever it is you commune with your deity, and a bunch of uniformed thugs break through the door and start tear gassing you and shooting you with rubber bullets. How would you feel about that? Well, that's what the Palestinians are doing that. Okay, another story. This one is coming out of Zero Hedge. Hamas militant wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades, has announced it is deliberately targeting the Dimona nuclear weapons construction site. And as much as I am sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, I think this is a bad idea, because if they were to actually hit and damage the Dimona nuclear reactor site, it would spread radioactivity all over that part of the Negev desert, and that would not be viewed in a positive light by the rest of the world, which is still dealing with lingering fission at Chernobyl and Fukushima. So I think that was actually a bad move on their part. Over in Iraq, there is a resistance group that is pledging readiness for military and security cooperation with the Palestinians in the face of Israel's aggression. And they are warning Tel Aviv that it can reach the depths of the occupied territories. The Secretary General of the Al-Nujaba resistance movement, Sheikh Akram al-Ka'abi, made the remarks during an unprecedented meeting with Ismail Haniyeh, head of Hamas Political Bureau, and Ziad al-Nakala, the Secretary General of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The Iraqi group's media office in Palestine reported on Wednesday. And they're saying the Iraqi people have always stood by the oppressed people of Palestine and supported their efforts toward liberation from the savage and occupying Zionist regime. I personally wish to fight the enemies in the Holy Land of Palestine. Meanwhile, rockets have been fired from Lebanon into Israel. And this is stoking concerns that Hezbollah may enter the conflict on the side of the Palestinians against Israel. So this is heading into potentially a regional war. And we're also hearing a report, this is coming from Jerusalem Post no less, rockets have been launched from Syria into Israel amid Palestinian solidarity riots on the borders. Now, of course, Israel has been bombing Syria and attacking the Golan Heights, so it's not that big a surprise that Syria would shoot back at this particular point. And here we have another story. This is coming from commondreams.org. And they're citing Reuters saying that the United States is delaying all efforts by the United Nations Security Council to issue a public statement and a ceasefire requirement during Israel's bombardment of Gaza. And meanwhile, the White House is ducking the question on whether the Palestinians have a right to self-defense. Now, I think common sense would be everybody has a right to self-defense, especially, again, this all started with Israeli forces entering the Al-Aqsa Mosque and attacking, people engaged in Ramadan prayers. So White House spokesperson Jen Psaki ducked the question completely over whether Joe Biden believes Palestinians have a right to self-defense amid Israeli airstrike. And she dodged the question and said the president believes Psaki said the U.S. is working to de-escalate and try and reduce tensions in the region, which is your typical non-denial denial that we get from the White House. Over in Iran, their top military commander says that as a result of the anti-Israel resistance rising strength, the balance of power in the region is changing in favor of the Palestinians in their confrontation with the Zionist regime. Now, of course, Israel still has access to all the weapons that the United States can send them, at your expense, I might add. But it does look like there is a tremendous intensity on the side of the Palestinians because, after all, they're fighting for their homes and loved ones they can see right with their own eyes, as opposed to the Israelis who are there pretty much for a paycheck. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, made the remarks in a message yesterday in which he strongly condemned the latest criminal acts of Israel against Palestinian people across the occupied territories. So it's heating up there. This could turn into a regional war. A spokesman for the Al-Qassam Brigades, which again is the military arm of Hamas, says the group knows no red lines or rules of engagement in its fight for the liberation of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and in defense of the Palestinian people. Abu Ubaida, made the comments yesterday while talking about the recent escalations of tensions between Palestinian and Israel across the occupied territories. Now, Hamas has come on out with a strange announcement saying that they have yet to unveil their main military assets. And they are warning Israel of a new military surprise. I'm going to take a guess here that Hamas has developed some very intelligent drones. But Hamas has basically come on out saying that all they've used so far against Israel is old stuff, old rockets, things that were just sort of hanging out in the warehouse, and that's what they're firing at Israel. But they're saying Qassam's main assets have not been unveiled yet. Now, it may be bluff and bluster, or there may be something really there. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin is calling the Gaza crisis a direct threat to Russia's security interests, and Angela Merkel is condemning the anti-Israel protests taking place across Germany. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs your help to keep on doing what we're doing and have been doing for a lot of years and hope to keep doing for a few years more. And we do need your support. And first of all, thanks to those of you who have contributed and donated to Republic Broadcasting. And for those of you who would like to donate or would like to donate again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, if you mail in a donation for $100, you will get your choice of an official RBN coffee mug or an official RBN t-shirt, so indicate your preference and t-shirt size and a return address, and we'll get that to you. And I understand we still have some t-shirts left, but we're getting low on those, so if you want one of those, you better move on that. If you send in $115, you will get both items. And don't forget the Frontside Firearms promo that is still ongoing. So in the last story that we had before the break, we were talking about how Angela Merkel is coming down very critical of anti-Israel rallies. It seems that they are sweeping across Germany, requiring police to step up security efforts. And German cities have seen mass anti-Israel demonstrations for 2 consecutive evenings. And according to Die Welt, about 1,500 people were in the streets of Bremen. Protesters with Palestinian and Turkish flags demanded that Israel immediately stop strikes on the Gaza Strip. We're seeing protests all over the world, and Israel supporters are getting on out there and trying to, basically bash their heads and get them to shut up, and it's not working. People are they're angry with Israel. They're angry with Israel's influence and corruption on our government, and they're ready to say to Israel, enough is enough already. Story coming out of Russia today chastising the New York Times because they came out this week warning against, quote, misinformation, end quote, about the recent Israeli-Palestinian conflict, saying it could prove deadly. Critics, of course, pointed out the New York Times' own history of fake news going back even before Saddam's nuclear weapons. And the New York Times is out there claiming that misinformation about Israel and Palestine is running rampant on social media. And that you shouldn't be looking at social media, just trust the corporate media to reassure you that Israel is in the right and Palestine is in the wrong. And so that's what they're saying there. Okay, in other news away from Israel, Turkey's car power ship, which provides electricity to Lebanon from 2 electric barges, said it was shutting down supplies over payment arrears and a legal threat to its vessels amid the country's economic crisis. Now, the company supplies 370 megawatts, or about 1/4 of Lebanon's total national need, and the company said it would have to shut down in the absence of moves toward some kind of a settlement. So we'll see what happens there. Over in the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte has rebuffed a call from China to withdraw vessels from disputed areas of the South China Sea, vowing not to move an inch backwards. Now, the Philippines has boosted its presence in the area of its exclusive economic zone, including Thitu Island, near to a Chinese military installation in defiance of the months-long presence of hundreds of Chinese boats it believes are manned by militia. Duterte's remarks on a televised address earlier today come as pressure builds on him to abandon his pursuit of close ties with China and stand up to what his defense chiefs say are blatant provocations. So the world moves closer to a war. President Vladimir Putin said earlier today that Ukraine was becoming anti-Russia and that Moscow would be ready to react to what he said were threats to its own security. Now, Putin was speaking a day after a Ukrainian court placed Viktor Medvedchuk, a prominent pro-Russian politician who says Putin is godfather to his daughter, under house arrest. Medvedchuk, who's promoted closer ties with Moscow and tried to act as an intermediary between Moscow and Kiev, is being investigated over treason allegations that he says are politically motivated. We have to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. Now, over the last several months, in fact years, we've been talking about wasteful military spending and some of the boondoggles that have been built at hideous expense, including the F-35. And one of the ones we talk about a lot is the F-22, which first of all turned out not to be as stealthy as it was supposed to be. And second of all, they have this problem with not being able to get oxygen to the pilots at high altitude, and they had to artificially lower the maximum ceiling for the aircraft to operate at. Well, now it looks like the Air Force is going to retire the F-22 early. And right now, the Air Force maintains 7 fighter types: the F-22, the F-15C and D Eagle, the F-15E Strike Eagle, the F-15EX Super Eagle, the F-35, the F-16, and the A-10 Thunderbolt. But in order to make way for a new air superiority fighter called the Next Generation Air Dominance System, or NGAD, they're sending the F-15CD, the F-15E, the A-10, and the F-22 to the boneyard. And as far as I know, there are a lot of people who are objecting to the retirement of the A-10 attack aircraft because they really don't have anything that's going to be able to replace it for that close-in anti-tank work. All righty, a little bit of economic news here. Earlier this week, we were talking about this bridge supporting Interstate 40 over the Mississippi River. And it turns out not only is the bridge closed to vehicular traffic, pardon me, the U.S. Coast Guard has closed the waterway, and now there are 800 barges stuck in the lower Mississippi River and unable to move north because of the bridge situation. This is almost like the Suez Canal jam all over again. And so that's going to cause all kinds of logistical supply chain problems here. Over in Great Britain, there's a department store, Debenhams, and they are shutting their doors for good. They're pulling down their shutters at the last 28 sites basically today, after 242 years on Britain's High Street. So another iconic retailer is biting the dust here. Meanwhile, story coming on out of Investment Watch blog, Joe Biden is threatening criminal action against those who are taking advantage of the gas shortage. And we had a story that came through here earlier today where gasoline prices, where the shortage is most severe, have hit $7 a gallon. So we'll see what happens there. All right, getting on to immigration. Just one story on that topic today, and this is coming out of CNBC. Google is leading an effort to maintain work authorization for tens of thousands of people whose spouses hold H-1B visas, the high-skilled visa that has become all too common in the tech industry. And companies across the tech industry, which has been vocal in fighting for increased immigration rights, submitted an amicus brief Friday in a case known as Save Jobs USA versus Department of Homeland Security. A Washington district court is considering the plaintiff's challenge to a Department of Homeland Security rule that allows so-called H-4 visa holders to work legally while their spouses on H-1B visas await green cards. And, you know, the reason this is such a problem is we're hearing about all these companies that are trying to hire American workers and they're not able to find them, and it's a real critical situation. And I think another 7 states have just ended unemployment benefits to, shall we say, encourage people to start applying for jobs out there. All right, getting on back to the Colonial Pipeline attack. There's an interesting article from Russia Today in which the Kaspersky Computer Security Company is saying that it might actually have been CIA hackers behind the shutdown of the U.S. Colonial Pipeline attack that has been blamed on some unnamed Russian group. And so Kaspersky is saying that this may have been an inside job conducted by the American spooks. And you know, as a propaganda tool, and who knows what else they wanted to do. Meanwhile, the supposed hacking group, DarkSide, has announced it is closing down. They're going to go away. They're going to take their $5 million in Bitcoin, and I guess they're going to retire. Speaking of CIA, story coming out of Natural News, and it's sounding the warning that there are all of a sudden a number of websites claiming to be conservative news sites that are putting out totally bogus stories to try and discredit the conservative movement. They're saying this is classic CIA Mockingbird media. And they're pointing to one in particular called Real Raw News. And they're saying that this is definitely a CIA front, and so you've got to be really careful. And this is, you know, one of the things that tells you you're dealing with the CIA is they're the ones putting out all this nonsense about you know, the flat Earth, as it were. Okay. In the world of computers, there's a new update to Windows 10. It's the KB5003173 Cumulative Update, and it may fail to install if Microsoft Edge has been previously uninstalled. So this was released Tuesday, and some users found they could not install the update, and the machines were being bricked. And they got a Windows update warning saying that error 0x800F0922 was encountered that prevented the update from installing. So it would be nice if Microsoft would get their act together on some of this. Okay, now then, another warning being sounded by Vice.com. There's a computer hardware maker, MSI, and it's warning gamers not to visit a website that is impersonating their brand and its graphics card overclocking software, Afterburner, because it's being used to push malware. And they said the malicious software is being unlawfully hosted on a website impersonating as MSI's official website with the domain name https://afterburner-msi:/. And MSI said, we have no relation to this website or the aforementioned domain. So you have to be very, very careful what's going out there. All right, we have been talking about the Mars rover, the Chinese Mars rover, and they were going to try and put it down today. But China has now announced they're going to land sometime between tomorrow and next Wednesday. And I understand exactly why this is happening. We kind of went through the same thing with the Viking missions, because the original plan had been for Viking 1 to touch down on the nation's bicentennial July 4th, 1976. And the orbiters were showing that the selected landing site was a little bit rougher than they wanted. So they kept saying, well, we're going to have to put it off and put it off. And we were literally getting calls from the White House saying, you will put that down on the 4th of July. And thankfully, the mission planners stood firm, because when they put the second Viking lander down, it just missed this rock the size of a Volkswagen Beetle that would have flipped it over and wrecked the spacecraft. So I guess the people in China are going through the same thing. They're making sure they've got a really good landing site to put this down on. And it turns out they're going to be putting it down very close to where Viking 2 landed back in 1976. Now, I don't know if it's going to be close enough to roll on over there and take a look, but it would be interesting to see how well the machine held up in the Martian climate for all these years. So they're going to be going for that one as well. And alrighty, we're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines a little early because I ran out of news. Area code 512-248-8252. And getting on back to some other things, there is this growing pushback to critical race theory, and we're seeing more and more people going up before school boards, challenging them, saying, this is a terrible thing to be teaching, including black parents. Black parents are saying this is a bad thing, and absolutely would agree with that one. So we already talked about the GOP has introduced a bill to fire Anthony Fauci. Over at Instagram, they have offered users 41 different gender pronouns, and the woke crowd is complaining those aren't enough. I mean, how many pronouns do you need to have? Oh, and I love this story here. I'm a Top Gun fan going back to the original hosts, Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and I'm blanking on the third one. But James May bought himself a Tesla Model S, and he has not been shy about tweeting out all the problems he's had with it, and the most recent one has to do with the car's 12-volt battery. Now, the Model S has two batteries. It's got the giant, big battery that powers the car, and then it has a conventional 12-volt battery that keeps all the systems alive. And James May says if you leave the car sitting for too long, the 12-volt battery goes flat. And he's saying, why is that happening, when you've got that big battery down below? All right, we're going to start taking phone calls now. We're going to start with Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, Mike. Good show today. I want to address, I think it was Al yesterday, Canada comment yesterday about nuclear power. He said it's not feasible. Al, there's no base load capacity for solar and wind. You cannot replace nuclear power with solar and wind because they cannot provide the base load capacity to keep societies of the United States supplied with energy.
Yes.
They will not work. And so I'm not sure people get this idea that these green systems are going to be sufficient to power a society such as the United States or Western Europe, for example.
Well, the problem is when the sky is cloudy and there's no wind, these systems break down, and there still isn't a good solution for long-term accumulation and storage of electricity to keep meeting demand when the sky is cloudy and the wind is dropped down.
Yes, I know. People keep talking about, well, we have battery storage capacity, developing battery storage capacity. No, you don't. There's no battery storage capacity that can suffice for this. And so a lot of what people are talking about now are advocating with respect to, so that they're replacing nuclear and hydrogen power with green energy. You're just based upon misconceptions about the technology that would work. It will not work. Find me a place in the world other than a small country that has an abundant supply of solar energy, for example, or hydroelectric power that you can point to that is an example of what the United States should become. I'm curious. This is an immense country. Canada's an immense country too.
Yes.
Plus Mexico. And you cannot, in any one of those countries, replace hydrocarbon power or nuclear power with solar or wind.
True.
And expect those countries to suffice to function at their current levels. It's just absolutely based upon a misconception, a pie in the sky notion of how energy systems work. I hear that stuff and I'm appalled. Al comes across usually as an intelligent guy, but for crying out loud, Al, I cannot believe that he was swallowed this nonsense. Please look at the technology, the system, the science behind that before you start advocating such nonsense, you and others like you. I've said what I got to say, Mike. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we're going to switch over to Sebastian in Sweden. Hello, Sebastian. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. I was thinking about the Middle East crisis now, and I know you've been talking about a lot of times you say that you can't, take the people of Israel because it's only the government. But the thing of it is, I think it's wrong because the people who live in the 67 borders who live there are wrong. So those people are, it's not the government, it's the people. They're intelligent. Mostly Jewish people are intelligent, and they know they're going to a place that, they shouldn't be there. And then they have weapons, and they can shoot Palestinians at random. And, it's just, the thing of it is, people don't understand in America that the thing of the Middle East is like the Palestinians are shooting bottle rockets at people with 44 Magnums.
Yeah, it's hardly a match there. Sebastian, I got to put you on hold. Do not hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Join us on the air, 512-248-8252. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Sebastian in Sweden. And Sebastian, if you could just pick up where you left off.
Yeah, okay. In the 70s, I was involved in a rights group for Palestinians, and I was like a big brother. Mm-hmm. So money to a Palestinian child living in the Gaza or the West Bank. And since then, I have a Swedish passport, so every time I go back to the States, I've always had to have a waiver. And I thought it was the, Palestinian question, but it could have been the fact that I've been to Russia 3 times, and the first time is like a suspect, the second time is a mistake, and the third time is a spy, as they said it back in the 60s.
Okay.
When you went to Russia, Yeah. So I've been there too, so I don't know what it is, but every time I go back to the States, even though I was born American citizen, and but I don't have dual citizenship. I only have Swedish citizenship. And every time I go back, I have to have a waiver from the embassy in Stockholm. And I don't know whether it is because of the Palestinian question I was involved in the 70s, or it was the fact that I went to Russia 3 times. But then again, really quick, the fact that last year there was 6,000 rapes in Sweden.
Yeah.
Last year, in a country of 10 million people. And let me tell you, between the ages of 13 to 15, a lot of girls were raped. Very many of those have committed suicide. I don't know how many. I haven't found that statistic on the website. I'm trying to find it, but I know there are a lot of them that are committing suicide because they've been raped from Muslims from Africa and the Middle East. And it's really a problem in Sweden now. And the government of Sweden, of course, welcomes them because they want their votes.
Yeah.
Just like the Democrats want the Mexican vote.
Yes, same problem we have here.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens, because next year is the election in Sweden. And the 1st of July, the government already has a bill passed saying that you can't say anything against foreigners in any media whatsoever for, during the election year. So it's like, it's terrible. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I agree with Tom from Florida. Tom is right on when he says about immigration, because I can see it, right here in Sweden, what's happening. So
yeah.
I like Tom from Florida. Okay.
Well, I'm sure he's going to call in here, any minute. And it is. It's happening all over Europe. It's happening here. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the globalists are just trying to blend everybody together, and achieve their globalist agenda. There, of course, is one group of people that aren't being blended together. Oh, okay. Sebastian, got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification. Have phone lines open, 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Hey, okay. Let me get away from the noise. I'm very sorry. On the Palestinian issue, I don't think this just happened right off the bat, not even planned this month. You look at all the diplomatic gestures that Kushner was making on behalf of Israel to the Arab states, and I think they weren't too successful with Jordan. So
no, they weren't.
Last month you had an attempted so they had an attempted coup in Jordan. They would want to secure cooperation to Jordan if they wanted to inflame the Palestinian issue so they can advance further and retake the mosque, or confiscate the mosque, because they want to build the third temple there. So I think this has been in the planning stages for a long time.
Well, we know that they wanted to tear down the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock to build a third temple there. That's been around for a very, very long time. I think the agenda right now, this is a grab by Netanyahu to remain in power. And so far it's working because the representatives of these two parties who were going to form a coalition to oust Netanyahu have put that plan on hold. So for the duration of this crisis, however long Netanyahu can spin it out, he's going to remain Prime Minister of Israel.
Right, and he doesn't want to go down in history as someone who surrendered to the opposition.
Well, he doesn't want to go down in history as having been sent to jail for corruption over that German submarine deal.
No, he sure doesn't. That's all I had for today. Sorry I don't have more on the table. I just wanted to connect those dots,
All right. Well, thank you very much here. And again, we have lines open, 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Obviously, Mike, I'm very preoccupied with Israel and Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
And last night I was really delighted. I was heartened when I read the words of a religious Zionism party leader, Bezalel Smotrich, who said he was outraged at what was happening by both Jews and Arabs, and he said, we have no other country. We must live together.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not he was sincere or whether others will take up that call, I don't know. But just the fact that a religious Zionist said it, to me, is highly significant because he's also a politician. Now, here's my concern. Yes, Netanyahu wants this war because it keeps him in power. You don't change horses midstream.
True.
However, he has been developing friendships with the UAE and all of the oil-rich Arab sheiks. They have treated their own people so abusively that the treatment of the Palestinians, we know about it because Israel is an open country and there's a lot of freedom for the media, even though it seems restricted. Far better than anything we know about what's going on in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, or anywhere else. So who do you think has an interest now in coming in as an ally to Netanyahu? My belief is there's a saying in Arabic, two actually. If you dare to challenge the status quo with a question, it is kusil son, cut your son. The other one is idhasu, crush him. If the Palestinians become even more troublesome, the Arabs may silently cooperate with Israel and crush them once and for all. They have been a thorn in the side of all the Arab countries. Every Palestinian who has gone to any of the other countries is not allowed citizenship, no matter how long he lives or is born there, can work, but is not allowed to even buy property, from what I understand.
Okay.
So they treat them even worse than they treat their own people. They don't give a damn about the Palestinians. They don't even care about, my guess would be, they're not even all that loyal to Islam, but it's a convenient way of controlling the emotions of their people.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it could spin out of control. And we have to take a lesson from it. Because yesterday on John's show, somebody was talking about the need to take to arms, and John said that is the last resort. He is absolutely right, because
Yes.
under cover of war, it provides the smokescreen for any kind of malevolent, nefarious activities, and always the most cruel and the most sadistic, and those with absolutely no empathy or compassion rise to the top. So again, I've said this repeatedly, the Arabs were wrong. They should have submitted from the very beginning when they recognized that Israel was an insurmountable force to be reckoned with. It was there to stay. If they had joined forces from the very beginning and accepted them, by now they would have been so integrated into Israeli society, they would have been even more participants at the upper levels. We have, there are non-Jews, Druze or Arab or whatever you want to call them, who are in the court system, in all the legal professions. What Arab country would allow that? Except maybe Iran, where the Persians have been there where the Jews in Persia have been there for so very long.
Yes.
But I really think on this side, I'm taking the side of Israel. Just as I was opposed to the flotation devices that were intended to break the grip on Gaza. Remember those flotillas?
Yes.
I was opposed to those because it's like a mosquito stinging a lion. You irritate the hell out of it, and it comes back even harder.
Well, that was a largely symbolic demonstration. The problem was Israel overreacted, and it killed all those people on the Mavi Marmara, and that, of course, turned world opinion against Israel. And I think right now that's probably the biggest thing on the Palestinian side right now is that so many people around the world are now demonstrating and protesting against Israel's behavior.
Only for now, until it begins to have repercussions on them. Right now, it's just a matter of principle and human emotions and human compassion and empathy. But that only lasts so long. Eventually, if this goes on, I mean, I'm fed up with it. I'm fed up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, I've had my bitterness against Israel for two reasons. But even before Israel, I have a lot of bitterness against the Arabs because they basically hijacked that area for 1,500 years under the Muslim armies. I have no idea what my actual heritage is because there's no passport or ethnicity on my DNA. All I can do is hope to find through, and it's only through my paternal grandmother that I know the name is Hananiah, which was the son of one of the princes, Zerubbabel, who led back the people in the third Aliyah from Babylon.
Okay.
So guess that I'm probably part ancient Jewish and somewhat Arabic, inevitably, as well as Caucasian. So I have divided loyalties, but for the longest time, my hostility was towards Israel because it had the power to put a stop to everything, and I wanted so desperately to go back. But when I did go back, I was treated well. I mean, I think my roommate was actually an intelligence officer at the university when I was there, but otherwise I wasn't prohibited from anything. I traveled all around freely, and I was very safe. So as long as somebody is not an enemy of Israel, they will be treated well. And the Arabs who are there are those who identify as Arab, who probably are not really Arab in ancestral terms, have adopted it for so long that they have been co-opted in this thing. Now, Ismail Hananiah with his Hamas, it's a power grab. Mahmoud Abbas, who definitely has Jewish ancestry, won't let go because he likes the position he's in. Arafat was close to bringing the Palestinians to peace with Israel. And that is probably why it was one of his people who killed them, not the Israelis. And so it's just the time has come for all of those Muslim Arabs in North America. Do not support this ongoing dispute. Eventually there has to be a surrender. This can't go on forever. And also, if there's a lack of fighting, a lack of a war, Israel cannot attack or do anything or take more land because then it's doing that in a time of peace. And then it would get censure from around the world legitimately.
Well, the UN is trying to do that now, but the United States is blocking that.
Well, yes, it's the empires that benefited by the creation of Israel because they want control of the region.
Yes, very much so.
And Germany and England, it's those who benefited, the previous empires who helped create Israel, assuming that they could control Israel when the reverse has happened. But Israel is just too powerful, it's too deeply entrenched. The plan to create Israel was in the works for at least 200 years. The battle for that land, that strip of land, that, by the way, if you look at the Ottoman governmental system, Palestine wasn't even mentioned. It was part of a vilayet known as Syria. Gaza was a vilayet on its own. But Palestine never really existed until the creation of the British Mandatory Palestine. That's the only time it existed. And I repeat again that most of the people who came there, if they were not the people who went to the hilltop towns, I've got a call coming through. I hope it's not interfering. But those who went to the hilltop towns were probably the original Judeans. But I'll let you go. I've been on for far too long. Once again, my show Sunday night, or our show Sunday night, is actually called Calling All Patriots. I was wrong when I said a call to patriots. I had a lot going on. So please tune in. I'd also like to explain more about the Prophet Muhammad, who was actually a Christian, not a Muslim. And it's in his name. It's in his name. In Arabic, the word for baptism is Ahmed. His name originally was Muhammad. He married a Christian woman. They were married in a church. She was wealthy. And in Islam, women don't inherit from their husbands.
Mm-hmm.
In Christianity, they do. So he married a very wealthy woman who was about 15 or 25 years older than him. He never had any actual children of his own. They were the daughters of his wife from her first marriage.
Okay.
Hoping my friends who are Muslim are not listening. But it's time people know. That's why Islam recognizes Jesus as a prophet and not as a divine being. Because when you want to institute a new set of beliefs, it's always more likely to catch on and succeed if you build on previous deeply held beliefs. So Islam incorporated much of Judaism as well as Christianity. And I'll elaborate more on Sunday night for anyone who is interested. So remember, ask anybody who speaks Arabic who will be honest. In fact, there's a movie on YouTube where John the prophet is saying that he was preaching to them, and then in Arabic it says "Ba'amidhum." The "amidhum" means, and he baptized them. Amid being the key word, baptized, hum being the plural. So Muhammad was actually a Christian originally, and he started Islam to unite all the warring tribes that were not Arabs. But obviously anyway. I've monopolized too much time. I'd better go. I think that's why John so graciously offered me that 1 hour. Steve Elkins will be joining me 9 o'clock Central Time. That would be 10 Eastern. And the show is called Calling All Patriots. I hope people will join in, and eventually I hope to be able to take calls and try to keep the brief. And not have too many callers like me. Oh, anyway, Mike, I'll let you go. And thank you for giving me this time.
All right. Well, thank you very much here. We're going to let you go. And just to sort of clarify a little bit of the history, I have reposted an article that I did some years ago called Israel and Palestine, The Maps Tell the Story. And one of the interesting things about it is that it does include scans and images of maps from 1851, 1864, even one from 43 AD that indicate the existence of Palestine. So I figured that would be a little bit interesting. We're going to switch to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. My congratulations to Layla. I disagree with her on grasping at a straw of hope where there's one Jewish Zionist who says he wishes they could live in peace. And I will tell you that these are people who killed their own people, sunk their own ships, terrorized their own people back in the 30s and 40s in order to get them to come to Zion,
yes,
to Israel, or who treated with the Nazis to keep that going, who attacked the United States with the liberty in order to keep their agenda going of grabbing land.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on and on and on, right? Who's is embedded so deeply into their theology that you can't find a rabbi who will actually come out and say that. And they believe in their own, Jewish supremacy. And it's as Layla said, it was in the works for 200 years or more.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept their eye on the ball, and they're not going to take their eye off the ball now. They're not interested in peace. They're looking for an excuse.
Yes.
Plans even faster, and nothing will stop to get in their way. They've gone to the trouble of taking over the media everywhere. The finance, banking everywhere. They own our government. They own the governments in Western Europe, and they're not going to stop at this. They have pogroms. Like the other day when Netanyahu had the temerity to say to make the comparison to Kristallnacht. For a Palestinian, every day for the last 60 years has been Kristallnacht.
Yes.
They'll chase people down and beat them where the settlers can tote guns and open fire without any repercussions at all. That's just the way they are. That is embedded in when you think that you're better than everybody, when it's embedded into your theology and it's gone for 2,000, 5,000, whatever it is years, and it's still there, listen, you can pogrom and crystal knock and beat people to death and do the lynchings, as they're quote called. That happens all the time there. So, you know, I don't know why grasping for a straw when look who we have, Netanyahu, Naftali Bennett, Zippy Livni. Look at these horrible people who've actually called for ethnic cleansing, expulsion. This is the mainstream. And by the way, there's people to the right of them that Netanyahu is now allied with.
Yes. So, he's definitely moving far right.
Yeah, it's a pie in the sky. It's not just that gentleman who called before was right. It's not just the government. It's the people themselves. It's the people who chase these people down and beat them, and the people who tote the guns around and shoot people. It's the people who set up their lawn chairs and watch Gaza being bombarded.
Yes.
It's the citizens' army that knocks off 100 or 200 Palestinians on a Friday with no problem at all, right? No problem at all. That was like William Calley for us, but for them, that's just another Friday. It's ridiculous, and I hope Layla is not selling her soul to get a radio show. Because
no, I don't think she is, because you know, I don't think Stadmiller is in agreement with her entirely on the situation in Israel and Palestine. So you know, what can I tell you? But we'll see how Layla does on her show when she does take phone calls, and you know, I wish her a lot of luck. And you know, anyway, listen, Peter, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We have open phone lines now, area code 512-248-8252. Call on in, spend the rest of the program with us on this wonderful Friday, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and the phone lines are all open. Area code 512-248-8252. So call on in and help us spend the rest of this Friday program. Meanwhile, getting back to some international news, Russia's military in Syria stopped and turned back a U.S. convoy as friction grows between Washington, D.C. and Moscow over each other's roles in trying to de-escalate the conflict in the country. Well, it's a little hard to say that the United States is de-escalating the conflict because there is this, you know, the story where the U.S. is stealing the oil and the grain, and, you know, the Syrian government doesn't want them there. The Syrian people don't want them there. And so I think the U.S. is really doing that a lot. All righty, let's see. We're going to go to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike. Oh, there you are. You can hear me now, right?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. I wanted to talk to you about some Jewish history.
Okay.
So, you know, we had this exodus out of Egypt because, you know, these Jewish people were slaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which, of course, there's no proof of.
Well, actually, there is. If you go to Zahi Hawass, who's like the head of Egyptology, archaeology rather, in Egypt, he says there is evidence for a mass exodus, but it actually happened to the Hyksos people, not the Hebrews.
Yeah. And then, of course, Moses, the parting of the Red Sea, right?
Yeah, and, you know, if Moses had turned right instead of left, then the Jews would have the oil and the Arabs would have the dirt.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know, and this sort of thing goes on and on and on, right, throughout history. And I'm not. And now we're going to get into, you know, Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the son of the Jewish God. And then, of course...
well, it all goes back to Abraham, and it may even go back further than that to Akhenaten, Amenhotep IV, where a lot of scholars, including Sigmund Freud, think that's the historical character on which the myth of Moses is actually based.
And it is a myth. You know, all this religion is just basically astrology, right?
Yes.
The season, the change of the seasons, the sun god Horus and all that jazz. I mean,
actually, Ra is the sun god.
Pardon me?
Ra is the sun god.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
I've forgotten more than I remember about this stuff. But anyway, it all comes down to the same thing: belief, right?
Yes.
And I'm not big on belief. I like facts. And,
yes. Same
as far
here.
As, history.
The only thing I believe in is having another scotch.
Yeah, exactly. There's no proof for any of this, and it's all based upon belief. And of course, a couple hundred years ago, these religions were just brutal. And in actual fact,
they still are. I mean, if you look at what's going on now, within Israel and Palestine, there's still a lot of brutality in the name of some god or goddess somewhere.
Yeah, and as far as the Arabs are concerned, I don't like what their idea of stoning is. I kind of like my idea of what it is, and to think that they would actually put a woman. Like hold a Canadian woman in Pakistan and want to kill her by stoning her to death.
Yeah.
Blasphemy. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. People that think like that, they're
should be stoned.
That do stuff. Like these guys are blockheads.
Yeah.
They're living in caves for crying out loud. It's brutal that you would actually consider, treating another human being that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
well, look at the Holy Inquisition, the witch burnings, the Spanish Inquisition, especially. It's what is that saying? If you can be made to believe in possibilities, you can be convinced to commit atrocities, and that certainly is true.
Well, hey, I mean, the CIA and the FBI live on those words, don't they?
Yes, they do. Trying
to find people to do their dirty work. So just to wrap it up here, once again, like a lot of things, religion is used.
Yes.
Just as race is used, and the governments and people all over the world, the elites and certain governments, they know this, and they use it against people. They use it to divide and conquer them, to break them down into smaller and smaller, more manageable, groups. For one reason. If they're looking over there, they're not looking at them and what they're doing. And I've said this before, even a few months ago, that in another year or two, there are going to be so many lawsuits floating around on this nonsense that's happening. It's just going to boggle the mind. I could have had a shot today through work, and of course, I said no way. Because there's no way anyone's going to stick that crapple in my arm.
Okay, Al, I'm sorry, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We have callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones here, and Layla has called back in. And Layla, I guess you've got something you want to update us on, so please go ahead. Layla, are you there?
Wow. I have the highest possible respect for Peter, and a lot of what he says is correct. But it also reinforces what I said, that in times of war, cruelty and sadism become the norm. It becomes accepted. And it is only in the absence of war that we can bring out our better selves and defeat the cruelty and sadism that might be inherent in all of us. But in terms of Palestinian maps, remember how Palestine was created? It's available anywhere. When the Romans could not defeat the Judean rebels, they finally crushed them brutally by bringing in 10 legions from outside the empire. They defeated the rebels in Judah, and then to punish the Judeans, they tried to completely erase their identity. They removed the name of the capital. Jerusalem, by the way, goes back to Ur-Shalem in the times of Mesopotamia, and they erased Jerusalem and called it Aeola Capitolina, named it after the family name of the emperor of the time. And then the Peleshet who were considered the enemies of Judah, they then named the whole region of Judah and Israel Palestine. But even the Romans called it Syria, Palestina, or Palestina, Syria, I can't remember. But you will also find that prior to that have the name Palestinian, Syria, or I think it was Syria, Palestina was the most common form.
Okay.
Go back to the oldest possible maps. Judea but it was always an I, Iodea, because the J did not exist in Latin and in most of the other languages. But there was one. If you're going to describe a country or a nation of Palestine or a city-state, tell me the latitude and the longitude of the territory. Tell me what form of government they had. Was it like the Roman Senate, where they had, a republic or an empire? What did they have? They were always vassals of another empire. But once Palestina was created, or Palestinia was created, and it became known as the Holy Land, it lasted forever. But again, never did it have political boundaries as we would know them. You didn't have checkpoints.
Yeah, but Israel doesn't have political boundaries either. I mean, they've never really drawn their borders.
Israel, well, they have tentatively, the whole Middle East.
True, from the Nile to the Euphrates.
Yeah, but that's Zionism. And again, we have to distinguish the difference. And by the way, about the crossing of Moses into the Red Sea, Ra-Mesis means born of. So Ra-Mesis was born of the sun.
Yes.
He was the son of God. And Augustus later did the same after the death of Julius. Augustus declared that Julius was a god after death. Therefore, Augustus could say he was the son of God. Mm-hmm. And there was to that effect in Anatolia. But anyway, I'm getting off track again. I'm sorry, I have this terrible habit of doing it.
Yes.
Palestine does exist not only as a spiritual realm, as the Holy Land, for all the religions, for any belief. Buddhists were also there. There were Buddhist priests who would preach their doctrines. Or never forget the influence of Zoroaster.
Yes.
Who first the duality of the divine. That not only was there a God, one single God, but there was also his opponent,
yes.
Satan. And he may not have called him Satan. But as for the crossing of the Red Sea, there is no evidence. Even the Hyksos were not large enough to have constituted such a large crossing. If there had been massive crossing with the Egyptian chariots following them, why has nobody found evidence of chariots that were engulfed by the Red Sea when it closed up again? They could have done it by satellite if it's buried under silt.
Well, I think probably, given the construction techniques used at the time, I think being buried in silt and water, they would have rotted away long before now. There's a school of thought that much of that whole Exodus story was not only pirated from the Hyksos, but it was amplified and exaggerated. That Pharaoh probably sent, some forces after the retreating Hyksos because they'd been looting and pillaging the Egyptian people on their way out. And as far as them getting stuck in the mud, they may have eventually extricated themselves and simply gone back to Pharaoh.
But there still should be some metal wheels from the chariots.
The chariots back then did not have metal wheels.
The chariots did have, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they were made of wood. But I do know they have found a couple of metal wheels that they carbon dated back to the time when this supposedly occurred. But I don't know if it's still on YouTube. The redheads in that area, as the Hyksos were always discriminated against. They were driven out of Persia. Mm-hmm. The Sumerians, they were called Sumer because they were called the black-headed people. Ismad. In most of the Semitic languages, the root word is SMR, Ismav, meaning black. The Sumerians were black-headed people. Now, why would you call them the black-headed people unless they were distinct from the majority? But since they had the power, there's some shows on YouTube, I hope they're still there, Plum Tree Productions, where they have done DNA testing that prove that their ancestors in the Polynesian islands came from outside of Persia and Egypt, and that their oral history is that they were discriminated against and driven out. And they went from there to Summer Island and then ended up in Peru, where a lot of the DNA testing proves that even the chickens and other animals, the bones that were found, are similar to the DNA of ancient animals in the Middle East, in the areas around.
Well, I don't know how compelling the similarity is going to be. Anyway, Layla, we're getting close to the end of the show, and I've let you have a good chunk of time. We've got a bunch of callers waiting on the line right now, so thank you very much. And we're going to switch to Kevin in West Virginia. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mr. Mike. I hope you and Miss Claire are doing well. The reason for my call today is for the next, I leave Sunday to go down. I'll be in Louisiana for the next 6 to 9 months to relearning how to live at a blind school.
Okay.
And I'm taking RBN with me because a lot of these people down there have never heard of RBN. So hopefully this is a whole new group of people, get to make a whole bunch of friends down there, and a whole group of people that's never heard, that have never heard RBN or any of you guys. And I'm hopefully going down here, to get what I need to get and get skills that I need to get to make my life better.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good luck on that.
Thank you. And my big push is opening up people's eyes to RBN and to the truth. I'm just going to try to be a light in the world and do the best that I can possibly do. This is a 16-hour hike for me. Never really been away from home before. And if there's other people around that are going to be near Ruston, Louisiana, don't be afraid to find me. I'm a very friendly person and could use all the help that I could possibly use and friends that I could possibly do down there. But thank you for your time, Mr. Mike.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to go to Dan in Washington State. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I got triggered by the last couple callers. It's pretty offensive when people say Palestinians never existed I know what she's saying, but
yes,
that's also Zionist talking point to justify basically genociding these people. And they do the same things to say the English. They'll say, oh, the English aren't even a people. You go back they do the same trick. So
yes.
I listened to Herodotus, the history, where the word history comes from.
Yes.
And that was written about 500 BC, I think. And there's no mention of ancient Israel. It's not real history. And that's the thing. We were talking about collecting coins. You can go get Greek coins and Roman coins at coin stores. They're very common.
Yes.
Well, there's no King Solomon coins. There's no King David coins. That whole ancient Israel story is just that. It's a story. I think Josephus wrote it in about the year 40 AD because I'm not seeing, there's very little proof of ancient Israel at all, so it just drives me crazy.
And there's been a lot of fraud with archaeological finds there, like the Jehoash tablet and the Temple pomegranate. And, the popular belief is that the Wailing Wall is part of the Second Temple. It's actually part of an old Roman fort.
Yeah, the whole thing, it's kind of like the Holocaust,
Yeah.
It's
a big fairy tale.
It's ridiculous. And the other caller about, stoning people, that is sick. But
yes, it is.
When the Israelis drop napalm on kids and people, that's not very friendly either.
No, it isn't. It definitely is not.
Marines, destroying pollute is not very friendly. So, these guys, John Hagee, these Christian Zionists, they're just as crazy as the Ayatollah. Really.
Yes.
These guys will have World War III, and That's it. So that was my main point. I mean, as far as ancient Israel, all these stories are just that. They're stories. And that's why I only go to non-Christian or non-Jewish or Muslims. I go to the ancient Roman, whatever ancient pagan history, because that's the only real history, or science and archaeology. You know, that's where I go.
Yes.
The Bible. Anyway. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good day.
All right, same to you, and we're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, on the Sea of Reeds, the Hebrew word yam means sea, if I pronounced that correctly, and the word self by itself means reed. In Exodus 2:3, hence a literal translation of Yam Suf, with the two words combined and construct state yields Sea of Reeds.
Yes.
So, yeah, and it's been changed into the Red Sea. So it just could have been a Sea of Reeds that the Romans chased it through. But anyhow, as far as the Palestinians not having a real country or not having an identity, well, most of the Israelis are descendants of the Khazarian tribe.
True. The Ashkenazis.
Ashkenazi, exactly. You know, wearing black coats and big furry black hats, that's not very cultural to that part of the world, you know? I mean, it's not very practical either. So it's people who have hijacked the religion and the language and identity, either through intent, which probably so, but also just through the years. You know, just time will do that.
Okay.
Oh, the whole situation, I can't side with the Israelis. Even if one of them does come out and say, well, we hope for peace, we want to stop, you know, well, put up or shut up. You know, where's the debate in the Knesset? You know, where are the political leaders? Israel talking about a ceasefire. They're not going to do it. And as far as armed resistance, Layla always talks against nationalism and armed resistance. Well, Afghanistan will soon kick out their invaders.
Yes.
United States Army and coalition.
And don't forget how Vietnam defeated the might of the United States of America. So it's not entirely beyond the realm of possibility that, you know, the Palestinians fighting for their own homes and, you know, their own loved ones, you know, might defeat a militarily superior force like the Israeli Defense Forces.
Exactly right. And those are the points I wanted to rebut. She'll go on and on and on and on and on. And I would like to know if Layla will take callers and actually have a debate or just have a billboard contest. But I'll tune into one of her
Well, we're going to find out Sunday night when her show debuts. And, you know, I assume that she'll be able to take phone calls because, you know, that's what we all do.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. Thanks for taking my call.
All right. You got it. And we're going to go to Daniel in North Dakota. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How are you doing today?
Hanging in there.
Good. Hey, so I wanted to mention the Christian archaeologist, Ron Wyatt. He's done documentaries where he's actually proven that there's an ark. That's just one site that he went to. He also went to the Red Sea and has documents, pictures, videos of the chariots that are actually in the water. So if you go on YouTube, you can look at those for yourself, that there actually is evidence where the Pharaoh crossed the Red Sea, and you can see those pictures and videos for yourself. So that's pretty much all I really wanted to call in.
Okay.
You know, people are saying there's no evidence. They obviously haven't researched Ron Wyatt in his documentary.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to start with James in Vancouver. James, I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Okay. Today's show is very good. And
I will be listening to Layla this Sunday.
Good.
My my adopted uncle was a Syrian, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Syrian. He was best friends with my father. But so I know a lot about this kind of thing, or some of it anyway. But getting back to Putin's missiles, how good are these things? Can they be intercepted, or are they really good?
They're really good, and the U.S. is working on ways to intercept them, but they don't have it yet. Anyway, listen, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We're going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program on this Friday. We're talking with James in Vancouver, who is expressing concern about Russia's missiles. And at this point, Russia is definitely leading the world in hypersonic missile technology. They have the Zircon, which can fly at Mach 9. And so far, the United States does not have anything that can defend against it. There are other missiles like the Satan II, the Avangard, and a couple of others like that. It's a formidable arsenal, and the U.S. is struggling to catch up at huge cost to you, the American taxpayer, I might add. So, James, anything else?
Well, yeah, so obviously, then if that's the case, then Russia controls the chessboard at this point.
Yeah, they definitely have a strategic advantage.
Right. So if things get too weird in the Middle East, they know how to take care of it. But I think it's significant. You mentioned that the Muslims in Germany and the Germans are marching arm in arm. Is that right?
I don't know about the Muslims marching arm in arm, but I do know that in Germany, as there are around the world, there are major protests against Israel for what is going on in Palestine right now.
Well, then the Germans and the Muslims are going to make friends in Germany.
Well, they might.
The other issue is, sorry?
They might.
Yeah, they're going to make friends, you see, and this is all going to work against. And the other comment I want to make is, as far as I can see, there's only two leaders in the world today. One is Vladimir Putin in Russia, and the other is Xi Jinping in China.
Yes.
And all these other so-called leaders, all they do every day is they call the State Department and ask for marching orders.
Yes.
They're not leaders. They call the State Department and say, what do I do?
You know, I mean, in the Oval Office, we've got his fraudulency, who, is just, not only did he steal the election, but he's mentally incompetent.
Well, so this is really, really, really good recipe for a world crisis. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we're heading into one, no doubt, and we're going to lose this one. We are definitely going to lose this one, and I hate to see that, but that does seem to be where we are. Anyway, listen, James, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to try and fit one more phone call in before the end of the show. Mitchell in Memphis, hello. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike, I get the record. I'm always your last caller. Listen, I don't have a lot of time. I can't go into what I wanted to go into, but I will say this. People were talking about Layla. I remember Layla just after the January 6th incident, what was that, at the Capitol? Stuart Rhodes of Oath Keepers was on John's show,
mm-hmm.
John Stadtmiller's show, and Layla said, well, she called in, they were talking about it. She said, well, we must very carefully watch Biden. What the hell, what does that mean, Layla? And do what? Let's just watch him.
Well, Biden really didn't do much of anything.
Let's just very carefully watch the house burn down.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Mitchell, I got to let you go. We're at the end of the program. The music is playing. My apologies to the caller who is still holding online. We're not going to get you today. Stay tuned for John Stadtmiller's show. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. Have a good weekend. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.